What will the U.S. ultimately do about Russia's aggressive role in Ukraine, even as that crisis worsens? President Obama says he will wait to see what comes out of these high-stake talks before making any final decision.
It is true that if, in fact, diplomacy fails, what I've asked my team to do is to look at all options. What other means can we put in place to change Mr. Putin's calculus? And the possibility of lethal defensive weapons is one of those options that's being examined. But I have not made a decision about that yet.
So John Bolton's now the former U.S. ambassador to the UN and a Fox News contributor. Sir, good morning to you. And
good morning, Bill.
Halting language yesterday from the German leader and also the president. Question for you. Will he give lethal weapons to Ukraine to defend itself or not?
I don't think so. I don't think the man knows what he's talking about. I think this is that the comments you just played demonstrate that. First, he says, if diplomacy ultimately fails, well, how long is that going to take? How much of Ukraine is going to be left if he waits? And then he says he'd consider all options, just as he's been considering all options with respect to Syria, with respect to Iran's nuclear weapons program. Not much encouragement there. And then finally, he says he would consider lethal defensive weapons. What is he talking about? What is a lethal defensive weapon? Is an M16 a defensive weapon? Is there such a thing as defensive hand grenades? If a weapon is lethal, it's going to be offensive or defensive depending on who's using it. That kind of confusion from the President of the United States encourages Putin in the Kremlin and discourages Western Europeans.
Well, I guess that means more than MREs and night vision goggles. The Europeans. Angela Merkel is clearly holding back. What are the Germans so afraid of here?
Well, I think the Germans, and Angela Merkel's a perfect example, are pro-NATO, pro-America, the Chancellor in particular. I think what she's worried about is 2 more years of Obama's presidency. She might be prepared to take a harder line against Putin, but she sees no American leadership. She sees no sign that the president's willing to take a hard line against this military aggression on the continent of Europe. And so I think she's going to look out for number one. If the United States isn't going to lead, she's going to cut the best deal that she can for Germany, and that's it.
He was asked about a red line. He did not answer it. But you have some advisors to the president. You have some Democrats in Congress who are putting pressure on him to deliver on behalf of Kiev. How does that change his calculus?
Well, I think at some point he might supply whatever a defensive lethal weapon is. I can't wait to hear what he believes that encompasses. But you know, when you do something 20% of what you should do 6 months too late, that's not necessarily a step in the right direction. I think Putin's ultimate objective here remains unclear, but I think with this feckless response from the United States and NATO, whatever the objective is, Putin is continuing to pursue it. He's not worried about targeted economic sanctions. He's certainly worried about the international price of oil. But the response from the West, I don't think, is a major factor.
It appears the sanctions are working. The price of oil has crushed that economy as well. John McCain said this just yesterday afternoon.
I'm not sending in a single American boot on the ground, although we may have some trainers with some equipment. But I'm not for sending any. And the Ukrainians aren't asking for that. They're asking for equipment to defend themselves.
Let's see if that happens. Question on Iran. How much of that is the elephant in the room? How much of this is a stalling technique on behalf of Putin or perhaps the Iranians as well? If you've got a deadline on the Iran negotiations at the end of March, that allows Russia to do what it wants for the next 6 to 7 weeks. Is that a part of this?
I think the president's trying to push off a crisis over the Ukraine because I think he is obsessed with the idea of signing this nuclear weapons deal with Iran. I think he wants to do it before there's any prospect of a vote on sanctions in the Senate. I think that means they will try and fulfill the objective they set last year, have a political deal by March with quote-unquote details to be filled in by June. I don't think that's enough, but I think the president's trying to hold on the Ukraine front, frankly, so he can appease Iran.
We'll see how that goes, because time's a ticking. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. John Bolton with us from Washington today.